We know the grid is undergoing massive change, which creates massive opportunities for local energy. The Energy Changemakers podcast offers rich conversations with industry leaders to help you and your company capture opportunities to build a decentralized grid. I'm your host, Elisa Wood. Welcome to the Energy Changemakers podcast. Hey, everyone. Train your eyes on Ann Arbor, Michigan, because there's a vote set to take place in the city November 5th that has meaning to the distributed energy community. Ann Arbor is looking at forming a municipal utility, but not just any municipal utility. It's a distributed generation utility, one that offers only clean local energy, such as residential rooftop solar, storage, geothermal, energy efficiency, or even shared energy. So if you're a homeowner in Ann Arbor and you want rooftop solar, the city would install it for you on your premises. So why did Ann Arbor decide to go this unusual route? I'm very happy to say we have with us today Missy Stultz, who is the Sustainability and Innovations Director for the City of Ann Arbor, a role she's held for more than 6 years. She's going to fill us in on why Ann Arbor is pursuing creation of this unique kind of utility, what it's calling a sustainable energy utility, how the utility will operate from both the city perspective and the consumer perspective. It's a very interesting endeavor. So here we go. Okay. Hi, Missy. How are you today? It's great to have you here. How are things in Ann Arbor?
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Things in Ann Arbor are beautiful. It's a great day, getting lots of stuff done. How about yourself? How you doing?
Very good. It's very hot here in Charlottesville, Virginia. So I am looking forward to the fall.
It's a beautiful time. I love the fall too.
Me too. Well, thanks so much for giving us this time today. Ann Arbor has become a fascination among distributed energy folks because you are starting a sustainable energy utility. So I would love to hear all about what this is and why you're doing it. But first, I'd like to learn a little bit about you. Tell me about yourself, your role at Ann Arbor, and what the city looks like from an energy perspective.
You bet. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Missy, and I am the city's first official sustainability director, a role I've held for just about 6 years. But I've worked in the climate field for almost 25 years now, lots of different roles. Largely, I started internationally, did a little bit nationally, but have always been in love and drawn to local work. So I worked in nonprofits, did a little stint in for profits. That didn't really speak to my heart, but that's okay. So this is my first stint, though, working in a local government, doing the work on the ground. And I find this really invigorating, fascinating, motivating, inspiring, heart wrenching, all of the things that you can possibly imagine. But it's been true for kind of the history of climate work that local governments have really been leading the charge. And I'm just super excited to now be sitting in one and able to demonstrate that kind of leadership that we need globally to show the magnitude of action necessary to equitably address the climate crisis. So, what a moment.
What a moment it is, and it's so great that you are where you are doing what you do. Tell me about Ann Arbor. What does it look like from an energy perspective?
Sure. Yeah. So Ann Arbor is a community of just about 120,000 people. When you look across our landscape of our housing, about 55% of our housing is rental, which is quite high. So 45% is more traditional single family residential. We've got this big university folks may have heard of, the University of Michigan, go blue,
Mhm.
that sits here as well. And when you aggregate our usage across commercial sectors, institutional sectors, residential sectors, you find that we use about 440 megawatts of electricity per year. We are also a fossil gas user. So we have a fossil gas system that does a lot of heating and cooling for the community, largely space heating and cooling. And so that's another challenge that we face is thinking about how to decarbonize both of those different sectors. And that's something we're obviously struggling with, working on a lot. And I just add our electric grid is pretty old. Where I said most of our system is a 4.8 kV system. It hasn't been upgraded in a real long time. And so we do have frequent power outages. We struggle with reliability concerns. We don't have a particularly resilient system. And while our investor owned utility is looking to make improvements in that system, and we intervene in regulatory cases to push them to do that, it's it's a Herculean task that we're talking about. So I often tell people as we transition over to the SEU conversation. I am really thankful for the electric grid that we have today. No matter where we are in this country, there's a reason we have modern medicine and a reason we have the job opportunities that we have. And that electric grid really was a backbone for a lot of that system. But I don't think that's the grid of the future. I think that is the grid of our past. So I'm excited to think about what really does the future hold.
And so that's where this idea of a sustainability energy utility comes into play. Now, you have specific climate goals in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, we've got an audacious goal. We've got a goal of being carbon neutral community wide in a just and equitable way by the year 2030. So we got to sprint.
Fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, not much
It's
time.
tomorrow, it feels like. Right. Yeah.
Right. So, what can a sustainability, they call them SEUs, sustainability energy utilities, what can this do? How can this get you to this goal that your current grid can't? How will it be different?
Yeah, yeah. And I do want to just point out one thing. In your intro, you mentioned that we are doing an SEU. This moment in time, as we're recording, we're actually prepping to go to the voters to get authorization to do the SEU. So I can't tell you that we're going to do this. This is something we want to go to the voters for to make sure there's broad level buy in. So I'll talk about what it is we've envisioned, and then we can talk about what the future holds after the vote in November.
Wonderful. Good point. You're proposing it. It's in the proposal
That's right.
stage.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
yes.
I mean, it's already approved by the AG, it's on the ballot, it's Proposal A here in Ann Arbor, authorizing the creation of a sustainable energy utility. And what that is an opt-in, it's an optional utility that is community owned and supplemental to our existing utility. So it is not a replacement of what we have, it is supplemental and only authorized to provide 100% renewable energy to our community for those who subscribe. Put another way, think solar and energy storage behind the meter systems that we're used to today that some of us might have. Think electrification support in home with appliance replacements. Think deep energy efficiency work. Imagine district geothermal systems deployed. Imagine small scale microgrids where neighbors are actually sharing renewable energy between households. All of this is what we're seeking authorization to, some of it build right away. Solar and storage would be the first offering that we'd have. Those are economical, they pencil, they make sense. We're doing them today. But we would also seek authorization, and we are seeking authorization to be able to explore, could we move to district geothermal for heating and cooling as opposed to fossil gas? What does that look like? Where is it viable? What type of demand do you have to have in a set geography to really make those economics work? We want to answer those questions.
Very interesting. And so you caught my attention when you're talking about solar and storage behind the meter. It sounds like the utility, this SEU, will mostly be dealing in local energy behind the meter, distributed energy. Is that correct?
Yeah, I often talk about this as a utility that's focused on generation. It's not focused on distribution, right?
Ah,
A lot of the infrastructure, actually almost all the infrastructure that we see today when folks look out their window are poles and wires, right? You're moving electricity. The grid isn't the goal. The goal is clean electrons on that system. So the SEU is hyper focused on generation, local generation, generation that can't be outsourced, generation that's installed by local labor with good paying family wages. That's what we're really focused on. And that generation isn't as vulnerable, right? Our distribution grid is pretty darn vulnerable to weather extreme events, man-made disruptions, et cetera, animals chewing on that line. But if that's not what you're focusing on, well, your generation's pretty resilient, actually.
so rather than signing power purchase agreements with a large scale wind farm or solar farm somewhere, you're focusing on generation that is close to load because it's more reliable. Is that the only reason, or are there other reasons that you are focusing on local energy?
Oh, fabulous question. There are a multitude of reasons we've thought about this. One, you nailed in terms of reliability, absolutely. But once we start doing generation with storage, now we're talking resilience, right? So big centralized grid goes down as it will because we are going to have continuing climate events that take place. That you have generation and some storage. You are okay. You have critical load. So we're able to check the box of reliability. We're checking the box of resilience. We also show economically that these rates will be comparable, if not less, than what consumers are currently paying. So now we've got an affordability opportunity here, and it's far more equitable. Right now, I happen to live in a house. We invested in solar and storage. We were able to go get the loan at a good rate, interest rate. We had the credit history that allowed someone to feel confident investing in us. But that said, many people don't, right? Many people can't, they're not sitting on $15,000 to make an investment, or their credit score isn't strong enough. Or even if they were getting credit, the interest rates would be so high that they're being left out of the clean energy revolution that we're all ushering in. By launching an SEU, there is no upfront cost because the utility owns those assets. So it is far more accessible and equitable for people to be able to take advantage of the resilience, the reliability, the affordability improvements that we talked about. That's critical. And then the last is, even if you could get solar, maybe your home or your business or your house of worship has beautiful, glorious trees that are blocking that roof or blocking the ground. And we want you to keep those. Those are providing essential value for stormwater, for natural systems, for aesthetics, for urban air quality. All of those things matter. But that means you're not getting solar. But what if the house right next to you or the house of worship right next to you had a roof that was big enough to generate more than their demand? You can be sharing. So once again, it's opening up so many more opportunities locally for people to be able to take advantage of the clean energy future we're trying to usher in. And oh, by the way, also helps us address the climate crisis. It's also safer, it's healthier, and it's local labor. All of those are reasons that we've been very excited in exploring this in earnest.
Wonderful. So let's look at this from two perspectives. One is how it will work in terms of the city, what mechanisms take place to make this all happen. And second, how it will work in terms of the consumer. I am that person with the tree or whatever the trees. I am actually, in fact, that person with the trees. And now that let's imagine it's happened and it's working. The SCU has been approved. And how do I now go about getting my solar panels or whatever I'm going to do? So let's start with government, then let's work over to consumer.
Let's do it. All right. Yeah. So, from the city's perspective, this is a municipal utility. And we run municipal utilities. We have a stormwater utility, a water recovery utility. We know how to run utilities. So, this is a utility that only those who take service pay for that service that they take, right? This is not a tax. Not everyone pays for this. Only those who take service pay for service. Great. So, from the city side, if it's authorized by the voters, we're standing up all the infrastructure that goes with that, right? We're tapping into our existing billing systems. We're working on our service offerings. We're hiring the crews that we need. We're letting the contracts for the installers in the marketplace. We're building that while we're simultaneously building demand. So, who's ready to sign up for the SEU? We're getting that wait list going. So, day one, when we've got the infrastructure in place, we can say, okay, we see we have demand for 5 megawatts distributed in this way. I'm letting a contract. Let's competitively bid for 5 megawatts. Excellent. This is our best bidder. We're deploying, right? You sort of see how the economics kind of play in that space and the technical and very pragmatic way you would administer.
Hmm.
So that's from the
Hmm.
government perspective. And we're doing a lot of work right now to set things in motion, or at least understand the things that will have to be set in motion if the voters do authorize the SEU. So that's happening right now. But feel pretty confident we know how to run utilities.
Great.
So that's great.
Great, great. And you've crunched the numbers on this, so you know it is going to be economical. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we've done a few different rate analyses, kind of getting more and more granular. And the most recent rate analysis, we worked with Stratagen, a firm that actually does rate making for utilities. And we did a conservative estimate intentionally, right? This needs to pencil if we don't get discounted rates for buying in bulk, right? So we went for kind of
Mhm.
a single roof top system cost. And that these are the kinds of numbers we put in. And what we see is that the SEU can come in at about 16 cents per kilowatt hour all in for a solar customer. Again, that's a conservative number, but today our ratepayers are paying about 19 cents to the investor owned utility. So we have an actual savings that
So you bring
folks,
savings right away.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and when you said you'd go out for the power, do you mean that you would basically be looking for vendors to install solar? What
yeah,
does it mean in this
yeah.
context?
Yeah, that's right. So I don't think it would make sense, although I guess this could change. My visioning is it probably doesn't make sense to have full-time staff of the SEU who install solar, because for folks, your listeners know this, solar doesn't need a lot once it's installed, right?
Mhm.
You don't care for it. So instead of doing it that way, we actually think it might be better for the marketplace if we go to our private industry and help them actually get these kinds of contracts, right? Our labor partners to actually do the installations. So that's the kind of contract we would let, competitive bid, who's going to come in and provide the best offer to our
Mhm.
ratepayers.
Mhm. That's great. That takes a lot of pressure off the customer, the ratepayer too, because I've talked to so many people who are out there on their own trying to figure out, "Who do I hire?" What's the best company, and will they be around? And, it's difficult. It's difficult for the consumer in this kind of new market out there. So,
Yeah,
it seems like
there's
you
a lot
take
of
that
noise.
pressure off.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah.
Absolutely. I just wanted to put in one other thing on the economics, that we know that batteries right now don't have a return on their investment in the same way solar does.
Mhm.
And that's when we think about it from a very linear, I put this much down, I saved this much. But batteries are so much more than that, right? They allow you to handle load shaving. They allow you to handle time of use rates, right? You can play and store up energy. They obviously have a resilience value. And so the economic analysis we did there was comparing a battery to a generator, which a lot of people are purchasing. And the economics show that we can offer through the SEU batteries and storage for cheaper than folks would be able to get a generator for.
When you consider the sort of grid value of the battery, that's where that
No, actually, just on hard economics.
just in hard economics.
Yeah,
Wow, that is impressive.
yeah,
That's very impressive.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, good. Well, tell me more then about now I'm the customer. I want to participate. How will this all work for me?
Yeah, so the way it's envisioned right now, and again, naming, we don't have it yet. So I
Mhm.
can't walk you through exactly your process, but the way that we've kind of mapped this out is you would tell me you were interested in joining the SEU. You would have some sort of intake assessment to understand what's your use profile, what are your critical energy needs. Should we be talking about efficiency first, before we size a system? What should, or should it be bundled in there? And then we would come and say, okay, based on your use profile, based on your home business, fill in the blank, we have these different offerings for you. Which are you interested in? Right. So let's say in your case, you say, we've noticed you don't have any insulation in your roof. So we can do some on bill finance to help you get insulation. And we've got, you're interested in solar and storage. Great. So we would do all of those improvements. For the energy efficiency work, you would pay through on-bill finance a portion per month, right, to pay back that upfront cost. But for the solar and storage, you're paying per unit of energy used for those different systems. And you're paying a bill just like you pay your existing bill. So you'll get two bills, one from our investor-owned utility and one from the SEU. SEU is first in, so sun is a shining, you are using those electrons. Your battery is getting charged end of night. Let's say you run your laundry automatically at 2 a.m., battery discharges, and then your water heater kicks on. That water heater is being powered from the grid. So you're getting a bill for that from DTE. There you go. You have your two bills. They're coming in. You know nothing different. Your systems are just working.
So you get 2 bills, you get one from the utility, basically kind of a wires charge, and you're getting your supply bill from the city.
Well, you're getting whatever you're using from the investor owned utility, right? So you might, maybe for some reason, we decide we want to do a smaller solar system for you that only covers 60% of your load. So you would then have the rest of it coming from the IOU.
Got it. And ideally, what's gonna happen is that solar is gonna sort of cut into the amount of supply you need from the utility, so you're seeing your bills go down.
That's right. And part of the conversation we're even having with our IOU is, as I mentioned early, our grid is pretty old, and the level of investment that our grid needs to be able to handle electrification, even just vehicle electrification that we're seeing, is really significant. Hundreds of
Mhm.
millions to potentially, B's, billions of dollars of investment. So if we can take some of that strain off the centralized grid, there's actually value for the rest of the ratepayers throughout the IOU service territory. There's also the potential to explore virtual power plants, right? Can I
Mhm.
aggregate this generation and this storage that we're putting in the system and actually have grid value? So it's not just kind of sever from IOU. It is very much this conversation of, can we be thinking about how we generate and use power and move those electrons in a far more localized way that is really respectful and respecting the climate crisis that we're sitting in at the moment?
And taking pressure off that grid, which is gonna be under so
Exactly.
much demand.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. It's pressure off the grid, also that resilience feature. No one wants power out. We had major storms move through. We still have customers without power right now. That can be life threatening, right? So what can we do to help take the kind of edge off by making sure critical, at least critical services are still being provided? Like if you need medical devices, you can still charge them. Your food doesn't spoil. You're not losing hundreds of dollars worth of your food every month or however regularly that disaster is striking. These are the kinds of things that are just very practical, but we're really excited about the SEU's ability to help mitigate those concerns.
And I think what's really important to point out too is that this is not a municipal utility. This is different.
Actually, it is a municipal utility.
Oh,
Just
okay.
it is a municipal utility, or it is a municipally owned utility. It is just not the load serving entity, right? So it is supplemental. That's why we use the term supplemental. So
Gotcha. I'm
this is
thinking of like a public power utility that actually owns the
correct.
wires and poles. You're not one of those. Right. Okay,
That's not the
good.
proposal of the SCU. That's right.
Right. Generation focus. Got it. Yep. Yep. Makes a lot of sense. So, a lot of times utilities are not very favorable about these kind of programs that encourage more local energy. How is it going with DTE?
Yeah, DT is just like every relationship I think we all have in our lives. It's dynamic and it's all of the things you could imagine. They are aware of what the city is trying to do. I think they very much understand the perspective and the goals that we hold. They have had appetite to discuss things like virtual power plants and how the SEU might actually be able to be beneficial to the system. They're eager to learn about the model that we're moving forward with. But, it's not, I'll frame it this way. There is a part of me that wishes I did not have to do this. It wouldn't it be nice if our utilities were helping us be more proactive in distributing in this way, right? Like that's the ultimate goal I had. And we don't have that. So, what I think they've come to really understand and respect is Ann Arbor has very, very ambitious goals and objectives, both about climate, about resilience, reliability, and about equity. And we are looking for collaborators to help us advance those. And if those collaborators cannot activate in the way we want them to, we will still move. And I think
Mhm.
that's some of what you're seeing here.
And so this all hinges on a referendum vote, which is when? What is the date of the vote?
November 5th.
November 5th, election day. Okay. And can you explain sort of the process of how voters are being educated now and kind of what you're doing between now and then?
Yeah, education is the key word. So we want voters to be able to open their absentee ballot or walk in to their voting place and have fact-based information on which to make their decision, whatever that decision may be. So we've been doing a series of webinars. We do meet and greets. We'll be at public events talking to folks. Again, very fact-based. What this is, I'm not telling people anything more than fact of what we're trying to bring forward. We go to neighborhood associations. We have an open line where if people want to come and have or want us to come to them and talk about the SEU, we will do that. I probably field an email a day from someone who wants me to come to their house of worship or to their neighborhood association, and we're making that happen. We also have a website. We've got short videos, we've got pictures and graphics of what it is that we're trying to do. We've got longer videos, we've got FAQs, talking points. So our website is constantly being updated as we're getting common questions from people to make sure we're answering them. And then we're doing mailers. Ann Arbor doesn't have a big centralized media presence. So we certainly are working with the media we do have. We have a standing sustainability segment on local news, the local radio station. I talk about this there. We run our own monthly piece for our local cable television network. We run an SEU special there. But it's basically kind of because we don't have one media outlet that everyone gets, we have to go everywhere. And that's, I'm tired, but that's what we're doing.
You are busy. There's a lot
We
going
are
on there.
busy.
What kind of feedback are you getting from people? Are there common questions? Are there things you're kind of seeing that they're not getting or common misunderstandings?
It's a great question. I would say the most common things are more explanation about the difference between a traditional municipalization effort where you really are taking over those poles and those wires and the generation versus the sustainable energy utility. So that's a common one we encounter. Others are really around opt in and what do I have to take service? Do I have to take all the services? Can I pick my services? And the answer is yes, you pick your services, right? And you only pay for the services you take. And then there have been a few recently kind of, this sounds a little too good, right? How is this possible? So we've been doing some conversations where we give the example of if you got solar at your house right now, you're going to have a return on your investment, right? That's what we're talking about here. It's just a local government doesn't have shareholders in the same sense. We have a high bond rating, so we're capable of getting dollars at a lower rate than other people. And this is how these economics, that's why you see what you see here. So there's just been more questions about the novelty of it. We often say nothing that the SEU is proposing to do is novel, right? Doing on-bill finance, doing solar, doing storage, these things are not novel. We have utilities
Mhm,
across the country doing this. We do this individually. Marketplace is doing this. What's
mhm.
novel is that we're doing it all. And so that navigating the sort of mind-blowing nature of this is where I spend a lot of time.
Oh, absolutely, I can imagine, and it's gonna be fascinating to see if the referendum passes, how many phone calls you get from other cities that wanna do something similar, because I think, you've really happened upon an approach that, as I said before, it takes a lot of pressure off the consumer and also helps your city reach its sustainability goals while also achieving all those other benefits that you described of distributed energy, so pretty exciting project. I'm very excited to see what happens. We'll definitely be in touch after the election to find out. And before we close up, just let me say, is there anything else you would like to let our listeners know?
One, thank you for caring. I will give you two things that I kind of share broadly. One, if you'd like to learn more, our URL is pretty simple. It's www.a2gov.org/A2, number two, SEU. So please check that out. And the last is an ethos that we live by in our office, which is the importance of transformation within our system. And while all of this work in this moment feels very overwhelming, we know that the best time to have taken action truly was yesterday, and the second best time is today. And that's why we're all going to get to work and we're going to usher in the future that we all deserve and that we want future generations to have. So let's do it together. Together, we can do incredible things. And hopefully, this is a piece of that incredible landscape.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Wish you the best of luck. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on the Energy Changemakers podcast. I hope today's conversation has inspired you to think differently about the role of distributed energy in our society. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform and consider leaving us a review. You can help us shape the dialogue around energy. Go to energychangemakers.com, subscribe to our newsletter, and join our community. Together, we can make a real difference in how quickly we can make our grid local, equitable, and clean.